back, folks, to another edition of Internal Budget. Brandon Mackey, staff writer for Silver7Sens.com, here with you. Make sure you follow me on Twitter at @BrandonMackey_ and check out the podcast at Internal Budget. Today on the show, we have the single most crushing offseason loss since Danielle Alfredson. She's the Calgary Flames beat writer for The Athletic, co-host of the Athletic Hockey Podcast alongside one Ian Mendez, and Baby Yoda GIF aficionado, Hailey Salvian. Hailey, for the third time, welcome back.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I mean, that was quite the introduction. I don't think it was that crushing because you got Ian. Like, we obviously knew that Ian was going to be my replacement. I didn't just leave and not have a plan, but, I certainly appreciate the introduction.
Well, we used to have both. It's like losing Carlson. You still have Mark Stone, but you used to have them both. So hopefully Ian doesn't head to Vegas anytime soon. But
yeah, I was going to say, maybe don't call him Mark Stone.
Yeah, really.
He also left.
It's a bad omen. But we come to you, Hailey, after your now Calgary Flames have officially been eliminated from playoff contention. And I mean, let's get right into it. Like, what went wrong with this team this season?
Yeah, I think that it's a difficult question to answer. I don't think that you can really pinpoint exactly one thing that's gone wrong. I think if you were to take a snapshot of the Calgary Flames at different points throughout the season, there would probably be different things going wrong. I think, early on in the year, it was about the quarter of the way mark, and they were still a 500 hockey team. They had some games that were really great, some games that were really terrible. And I always go back to this, and Milan Lucic said that, the team was like Jekyll and Hyde. Their good was very, very good. They looked like the team that everyone thought they could be, because on paper heading into the season, a lot of people thought, myself included, that the Flames would be, fighting for a second or third overall spot in the North Division. I certainly thought on paper that this looked like it was going to be one of the teams who had a really good shot to at least with this divisional format, make a pretty decent run through the playoffs, because they'd only be playing against Canadian opponents. Obviously, we didn't see that. And yeah, Lucic called them Jekyll and Hyde. And I thought that was, kind of the perfect way to describe the Calgary Flames at the quarter mark, the halfway mark. And now I just think that, you can see glimpses of what this team is supposed to look like. But I think the kind of overarching thing I would say that's been wrong this year is this team hasn't been they haven't been as good as the sum of their parts. They just, again, on paper, this team should be a lot better, and there's clearly something wrong. And figuring out what that is, that's, if they would have been able to figure that out, they wouldn't have gone through 6 coaches. They wouldn't have missed the playoffs for the third year in the last 6 seasons. There's something going wrong in Calgary. And it's been difficult to figure out what that is. I think this year specifically, we're seeing a wildly inconsistent hockey team, and we're seeing a team that has failed to, maybe failed's the wrong word. It's just a team that hasn't been able to put it all together at the same time. So there's been times in the season where, Johnny Gaudreau had a really great start, but, Matthew Tkachuk had a slow start. Or Jacob Markstrom was incredible, but the team in front of him wasn't playing very well. And then you switch to Daryl Sutter, and the team's playing better, but Markstrom's hurt, and then he's come back and he's playing, bad. Markstrom was not good for a pretty long stretch. And I do believe that was probably lingering from the time he missed due to injury after the collision with, I think it was Tanner Pearson with the Canucks. So it's come in these waves through this season where, some guys have been really great, others haven't, and they just haven't been able to put it all together to be, the team that everyone kind of expected they'd be.
The mid-season coaching change came with its share of controversy, and it was another notch in the belt of the Sens sickos. But did you see a difference in the Daryl Sutter Flames from the Jeff Ward Flames?
Definitely. I think this is a more structured team. I think it's a team that the difference in practice too is it's pretty, the practices are shorter. They're a lot faster paced. I think, the first day that Daryl took over practice, the guys were saying, like, this is the best practice we've had all year. And, I don't think that the Flames struggles are all at the feet of Jeff Ward, but, I think there's been some legitimate questions raised, reading into the player saying this is our best practice that we've had all
Yeah.
season. March 13th shouldn't be your best practice ever. And then, you had some comments from Daryl Sutter throughout his time now here again, about guys needing to change their practice habits and changing their work ethic and changing their commitment to hard work and playing the right way and playing with pace. And so those are things that I've seen from this group. In practice, there's a pace, there's a work ethic, there's a commitment. You're seeing that through the games. They're still well under 500. Again, with Ward, they were a 500 hockey team, and under Sutter, I think they're 5 or 6 games under 500. So they're not winning, and ultimately your team is what the record tells you. But I do think that the team has been better. They're playing different. They're playing better. Guys like Sean Monahan are becoming, good two-way centers. And that's not something that people have said about Sean Monahan throughout his career. I think a lot of people probably called him, he's your go-to shooter that can play with Johnny Gaudreau. People weren't calling him a 200-foot player. Daryl said that, Monahan has worked at that to become a 200-foot player. We're seeing him stay out and practice longer. We're seeing him play on the PK now. So Sean Monahan's an example of a guy playing the Daryl Sutter way. And that's been the biggest difference, is that they're playing Daryl Sutter hockey. Some people call it boring, because they make it a real slog through the neutral zone. They're really defensive first. And, we've seen the Calgary Flames hold a team like the Edmonton Oilers to 17 shots, Montreal Canadiens to 17, 18 shots. There's been obviously some games where they've been blown out, some games where they've allowed, 30 plus shots on goal. But they have been doing a better job limiting chances. And I do think that the team has been playing better. They just obviously haven't been winning.
I take it you think that Daryl Sutter's the guy to lead the team going forward then?
Well, he has to be. I don't see this team making another change. I think regardless of what people think about Daryl and his systems, and I mean, regardless of what people think about Daryl in a hockey sense, I'm not, I got, I just think, there's some people who maybe think he's, uh, like, why are you going back to an old coach, or, it's boring, whatever. I think regardless, if we think that's right for the personnel, 'cause there are people who I've seen people say, we need to build for speed and skill, and we need to be a rush team. Like, they're not going to go and get another coach. There's been 6 coaches. I think that the Calgary Flames are going to be committed to Daryl Sutter hockey, and it's going to be the players that need to adjust. So I don't know if he's going to be the one that helps them win a Stanley Cup, but they're certainly not going to, make another coaching change because the players aren't responding to it. I think that they've kind of run out of the excuses to say that it's the coach, because they've been through so many. And, Daryl Sutter has shown that he can win Stanley Cups with his systems.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that, that's going to be what they stick with, and it's going to be the players that need to adapt.
Yeah. We're kind of bearing the lead here, being an Ottawa Senators podcast, but Ottawa really had their way with the Flames this year, taking the season series in the end by a final of 6-3. Why did Calgary struggle so much against the Senators in particular this season? I mean, they obviously had their struggles against everyone, but there was something about Ottawa that seemed to really have their number.
I think that, if you look at the games against the Sens under Jeff Ward and the games against the Sens under Daryl, I would say that it was, somewhat different. I think if you watch the games against the Sens under Ward, it looked like a team that wasn't physical. They weren't skating. I thought that the Sens, looked like the harder working team who wanted it more. Obviously, they still kind of had their number with Daryl, but I thought the games were better in a way. It's hard. I don't like talking about what's been wrong with this season. I don't know what it was about the Sens Calgary matchup. And, we asked Daryl Sutter that question. And, actually, we asked Daryl about why the Flames matched up against Montreal so well, because Calgary did a really, really good job against the Montreal Canadiens this season. And Daryl said, sometimes you just have a team's number. And he's like, we certainly see that against Ottawa. They have our number for whatever reason. They just match up really well against us, and that just happens sometimes, especially in a season like this when you're playing against teams 8, 9, 10 times. You're going to have those swings, and you're going to have teams that you just can't get past. And I think that the Sens have been, other than that start to the season, that kind of bad like 12 to 15 game stretch. I thought
Kind of bad.
it wasn't a good stretch to start off the year, but I think that, I've always said this season that the team is much better than the record would indicate, and anyone who is taking the Senators lightly in these matchups wasn't paying attention. This wasn't a team that was coming in with no shot at beating the Calgary Flames. They have some skilled players. They had guys who are setting records for like scoring streaks. The Sens aren't a team that you can walk in and take lightly, because they're gonna walk all over you. And I don't know if the Flames took them lightly per se. I just think it was a matchup thing. The Sens have a way of grinding you down with their style of play, but they can also be pretty good off the rush. They've got some skill, and if it's hard to say why they had Calgary's number. I just think it was one of those things this year where they just matched up really well against the Flames.
Yeah. There's a couple times where Ottawa goalied them too, where Philip Gustafson stood on his head and stole a game. But I think
I would
the
say,
question.
sorry to cut you off. I would say
No,
that
no.
is like, I'm not to be disingenuous towards Philip Gustafson, because he is a good goalie prospect. He played a really great game. But when you're the Calgary Flames and you need a win, and you make a rookie goalie making his NHL debut look like a Vezina winner, like that's a you problem as well. Like you
Very
have
true.
to score goals in those situations. You have to. I think, again, Gustafson played a great game. He's an upcoming good goaltender, but I would also say that the Flames, after that one, it was like, how can you not score a goal? Like the Sens have been scored on more times than any other team in the National Hockey League, and you did not. You were unable to score a goal against a guy making his NHL debut. And you certainly have the weapon. It's not like the Flames don't have guys who can score goals. They have plenty of 20, 30 goal scorers on their roster, and they couldn't do it. So it's been one of those seasons. Right.
And that kind of plays into what I was going to ask you next. It's a question that I'm sure you're going to be asked invariably over the offseason. What's the direction of this Calgary team going forward? Is it time for a rebuild? Do they stay the course? Do you kind of try to retool things a bit? Like, clearly this is not working, because you have this core that's been together for a good amount of time. They haven't had sustained regular season success, and especially not playoff success. So what do you do if you're this organization?
Well, I think you need to ask yourself too, like, did Daryl Sutter come out of retirement to rebuild? Did you sign Jacob Markstrom to a 6-year, $6 million contract to rebuild? Did you bring Chris Tanev for 4 years to rebuild? So, the kind of proof is in the contracts for me, and the proof is in the coach that they hired. I know a lot of fans are saying like, that's enough. We've been in the middle forever. The middle is death. Tear it down, blow it up. Let's draft high for a couple years and go from here. I disagree with the fans that have said that, and I've written that in pieces. Again, I think, you have Daryl Sutter, you have Jacob Markstrom, who, he was fourth in Vezina voting last year. Like, he was just short of being a finalist for the best goaltender in the National Hockey League. And, people are like, oh, well, he's making so much money. He's in his 30s now. Like, what's that contract going to continue to look like? And, it's just the discourse changes so quickly, right? The preseason, it was, we finally have our goalie. We finally have our guy. And now it's like, oh, well, we should probably get rid of him so we can rebuild. You still have your guy. This year just didn't go properly. I think we need to, I understand this is my first year in Calgary, and I understand that I haven't been through years and years and years of, being stuck in the middle of the league and not having playoff success and not having regular season success. But I do think that there is enough here in Calgary that you don't need to do a complete blow up. I think you can kind of retool on the fly, keep, the pieces of your core that you see a future with intact and build around them properly. But, when I say that, I'm not saying like, let's just do some window dressings here. I think that the Flames still need to make significant changes in the offseason if they're going to be able to successfully retool. You can't just go out and sign the Josh Levos and Dominic Simone's, the Joachim Nordstroms of the world this year. And to be fair to the Flames, they spent $10.5 million on Tanev and Markstrom last offseason, and they kind of had to shop the bargain bin, for lack of a better word. And sometimes when you do that, you get a great player who outperforms his contract. And sometimes when you do that, you have a guy who gets sent down to Stockton, or you have a guy who scores one goal for you. And that's kind of, again, been the Calgary Flames season. These depth players that they went and got, a lot of them haven't, performed to the level they thought they would. So, I think that this is a team that is poised to make significant changes, because this core has won one playoff round since 2015 and missed the playoffs 3 times and been knocked out of the first round every time since then as well. So they've either missed the playoffs or not won a round. So it's not great. I think, though, I don't think that they're one move away from being a contender. But I think that, they would need some significant moves this offseason to get them out of that kind of mushy middle of the league. But I don't think it's time for a rebuild, because you've got Chris Tanev, who in my opinion is the best shutdown defenseman in the league. He showed that this year. And at least this season, he was the best shutdown D. And everyone talks about the North Division being bad. Like, Chris Tanev's the best shutdown D in the NHL, in my opinion. You have Matthew Tkachuk, who had a bad season, but it's one bad year in 5. I'm not buying into the get rid of Matthew. It's truly strange, the difference in the discourse around Matthew and Brady. Elias Lindholm's a great player. I still think Johnny Gaudreau has value. Your defense, is solid. You've got Noah Hannafin, you've got Rasmus Anderson, Chris Tanev. I mean, Gio is getting older, but he's still, a good, reliable defenseman. And you have Jacob Markstrom. So Andrew Mangiapane is a great player. Dylan Dubé is making some good strides. They're not looking at a blank canvas. They're not looking at a bunch of bad contracts. Like, there's a worse position that you could be in. Right. So I'm not in on the blow it up. And being from Ottawa, covering the Sens, I think you look at the situations too, and the players in Calgary aren't pending UFAs. They're not offloading their UFA contracts. Like, I know Chris Tanev's not Erik Karlsson. I know that Mangiapane is not Mark Stone. Like, these are different players, and we've seen teams offload better, more significant pieces, but those players were UFAs, right? And the players here in Calgary are still under team control for at least a few more years. So I think that you at least try to make it work with the moves that you can do. And if it doesn't work and they're not in team control anymore, then you can talk about, blowing it up. But got Matthew Tkachuk in team control. You've got Jacob Markstrom in team control. I just think that you have to just choose the direction you want to go and who you want to build around, and you just have to make the right moves. It's easier said than done, but I'm not team rebuild.
You mentioned that there isn't one move that is going to put this team over the top, but is there one pressing need that you can identify right now for the Calgary Flames?
Yeah, their forward group needs a retool. I think that's the most important part. I think, one of the most consistent, issues with the Calgary Flames has been if you shut down Johnny's line. Like, and Johnny and Monty have been separated this year, but it was like Johnny and Monty are getting shut down, and then Tkachuk and Lindholm aren't scoring. Then you look at your bottom 6 and like it's crickets. That was a big problem 2 years ago. They shut down Tkachuk and Gaudreau, and then no one was scoring. And I think that's been probably an issue that's held true this year as well. I think that was one of the, reasons why Brad Treliving made some of the moves that he did in the offseason, and some of the line combinations we saw earlier in the year. They were really trying to stop with the load up the top six and let the and just hope that the bottom six can do some secondary scoring for you. That was something that they wanted to do. They wanted to have more secondary scoring and kind of, I guess, spread the wealth throughout the lineup, and it didn't really work again this year. And we've seen, when Tkachuk isn't scoring, when, and I think some of the secondary scoring's been a little bit better down the stretch. I mean, I don't remember the last time someone other than like Gaudreau, Lindholm scored. Maybe I'm just tired. But those two have definitely like held the bulk of the scoring, Andrew Mangiapane too. So I think that the forward group needs a retool. I think if you're looking at, what this group looks like next year, if you're looking at potential line combinations, right now you've got Gaudreau, Lindholm, Tkachuk, you have Mangiapane, Monahan, Dubé, and then Lucic and Backlund. And, that's not great. I think that they need more depth on the wings. I do think that they probably still need an elite number one center. I think Elias Lindholm is very underrated. I think he's a great versatile player. I don't know if he's a true number one center when you're looking across the league. And I just think, their depth on the right wing's not great. I mean, you've got Tkachuk who's playing on the right side because he's playing with Johnny, but Tkachuk typically plays on the left wing. So when you're looking at the right side, you have Dylan Dubé and like Josh Levo, Brett Ritchie, Joachim Nordstrom. Like it's just not good enough. And so I think that that's going to be a big area where the Flames need to go out and get more top line, top six wingers, and try to make their forward group a little bit different. Because I think their defense their third pair has been a serious work in progress this year, but I think their top four is good. It's very strong, again, with Noah Hannafin and Rasmus Anderson. Chris Tanev and Gio have been a great pair together. Third pair hasn't been great. There's been some young defensemen who haven't, been what the Flames maybe expected of them. And that's been, a major question mark this season too. But again, I think the forward group is probably the biggest place where they should make some significant changes.
Mm-hmm. And kind of pivoting to the Senators, this was a drastically different team from the one that you covered last season. What were some of the key differences that you saw?
Well, I will say I did cover the team up until like the start of the year. So I did get to know like all these new faces. I mean, because the move happened like right before camp started.
Right.
So I was quite familiar with the roster construction. The Evgeny Dadonov signing, you're bringing in Josh Brown. I did see what happened during camp with who made it, who didn't. I would say that like the big difference is, I mean, they kind of swapped out their filler pieces. I think that a lot of their young players took steps in the right direction. And obviously we saw that with guys like, Drake Batherson was great this season. I think it just kind of shows what confidence can do for a player. That's not the Drake Batherson we saw at the NHL level to start the year when I was covering the team. He was not confident with the puck. He was gripping the stick too tight, and this is a really confident Drake Batherson we've seen this year. There was periods of the season where you just wanted to get him the puck because he knew he was going to score. He was really, really hot at different points of the year, and he's been a great player. That top line with Batherson, Norris, and Tkachuk is unreal. Like that's going to be a really good line for the years to come if they can keep that together. Stützle's been great. Connor Brown, again, I think, I wrote twice that I thought that Connor Brown was a very important piece of the Sens core, and he certainly showed that this year. Nick Paul is a great story too. Differences, I don't know if obviously there's differences because they changed a lot, but I think the core of the Sens team stayed the same. If we all agree that, some of those core players weren't in Ottawa last year, but we all kind of knew who they would be. So I think at, the nucleus of what the Sens are going to be in the future, I don't know if there was that many changes. I think there's probably more questions about if Logan Brown is a part of that nucleus. But in terms of, the long-term future of the Ottawa Senators, I don't think anything really changed. You still have, a future group that looks like Kachuk, Norris, Batherson, Formanton, Shabbat. I almost forgot about Shabbat. And, Tim Stützle, the players in UND. I mean, Pinto's been great. I thought JBD looked great the other day here in Calgary. He was moving the puck. He was skating up the ice. He looked really confident and strong. So I think, the players that I at least believed would be part of the long-term future of the Ottawa Senators, that didn't really change. I know Willanen got traded. I think he probably just needed a change of scenery. And I know that Logan Brown hasn't, he's had another season where he hasn't been able to stay healthy. And that stayed true as well. Like, that hasn't changed. We've always said that there's no question that Logan Brown is a talented and highly skilled center, but he needs to stay healthy because his development keeps getting paused every time he misses time from the game. And that's continued this year too. So I know there's been some changes. You've got Dadonov. I mean, Matt Murray's been in net. You have different goaltenders. You have different depth pieces. But again, I think at the end of the day, the nucleus of what we can assume the Ottawa Senators will have in the future has been the same.
Mm-hmm. We talked a lot about Tim Stützle right before the draft and the kind of impact that he would have. How did he measure up to your expectations in year one from what you saw?
Yeah, I think he looks like, I think I wrote and said multiple times, if there's a player who could have, a better impact or a bigger impact on his team out of the draft than Alexis Lafreniere, it's going to be Tim Stützle. I think he's shown that. I think he was able to step into the NHL right away, and he's been a good player. I think obviously there was some times where you could see that he was struggling or he was trying to figure out his time and space. I know that I saw a lot of people being critical of DJ Smith early on in the year for not benching Stützle, for not putting him on in certain situations. And I think that DJ probably deserves more credit for the way that he was able to shield his young players in certain situations. And
definitely.
If you have a rookie who's your number 3 overall pick, he's your big shiny new piece that everyone thinks is going to be the best player in the future. You don't want to put him in a situation where he's going to look like Drake Batherson did last year.
Yeah, absolutely.
You don't want him to look like you don't want him to look and start to feel like he doesn't belong at the NHL level. So I think DJ did a really great job shielding him and getting him ready. And we've seen him be able to step into bigger and more opportunities as the season goes on and his confidence grows. I think that his speed and his skill is really impressive. He's got a really great shot. I still think, he's still developing. He's 19 years old. It's his first year in the NHL. He's not going to win like the Calder. This isn't like the greatest rookie season we've ever seen, but I think it's been a really great rookie year for Tim Stützle, and he was a great selection at 3rd overall. I know number 3 was the easier pick between 3 and 5 because it was like you either take Byfield or Stützle. But I think he's been great. I think my expectations of him have been matched. And I think that he has a really bright future along with a lot of the other young players in Ottawa.
Yeah. We all know the old man, Kirill Kaprizov, is going to win the Calder Trophy this year. But yeah.
Someone got mad at me because Ian and I talked about it on the podcast. And I said, I don't think he's an old man, but I think that you do need to, if you're voting, I think that you should be allowed to use your critical opinion and say, hey, maybe Jason Robertson is a 20-year-old rookie in his first legitimate professional season. He doesn't have the same, he has 3 to 4 goals less than he does. It's not an updated statistic. It's hey, maybe I vote for him first because he only has a few less goals and he's actually a rookie. And people got mad at me. I was like, I don't know. I'm just saying. I had a conversation with someone. I don't have a ballot this year because I'm new in Calgary and only 2 writers got a ballot and I've only been here for 4 months. But I said,
Mhm.
like, if Josh Norris isn't a finalist for the Calder, I think I'll be disappointed in people because he's put together a really great rookie campaign.
He should be in both ends of the ice. He's been unbelievable. And even Stützle has had an amazing
Yeah.
season. He went 13 games without a goal. And it was one of the worst, most bouts of snake bitten hockey I've ever seen. He was hitting posts. He was getting robbed. Like it just
Yeah,
would not go in. And you could
that's
see the
hockey
frustration.
sometimes.
Yeah, and you could see the frustration on his face. But I think you're right about Kaprizov as far as I'm concerned. I mean, this is a guy who played what, like I think 6 seasons in the KHL, and he
6.
was an all-star in 5 of them. And this guy's a
He was the
rookie.
KHL he was the KHL Rookie of the Year in 2014.
He's going to be the NHL Rookie of the Year in 2021.
Like, I saw that and I was like, "No. No, like, there needs to be something." And you don't wanna add further restrictions. It's already 25 and under. It's already first year in the
Mhm.
NHL. And that's where I say, like, I think people with a ballot need to just, like, look at that and think for a second.
Well,
Because it's not like he's 20 goals ahead of everyone. Like,
no.
Jason Robertson did close that gap. Um, I don't know. People were like, "So you're saying that people should add their own rules?" I'm like, "No, I'm just saying think critically because you have a freaking NHL ballot."
Well,
Like,
the criteria literally says that if you have a certain amount of seasons in another major professional league, you're supposed to be ineligible. And I think the KHL would qualify as another major professional league. I mean, it's
yeah,
the only one that even holds a candle to the NHL, I think. So
yeah.
eh, I
Like,
don't
it's
know.
not like he had 6 seasons in the second tier Swedish junior hockey league,
Yeah.
right? It's the KHL.
Or even 6 seasons
Yeah.
of like mediocre play in the KHL. He's a superstar in the KHL. But, I digress. I could seriously talk about this all day, and I'm going to get flamed by Minnesota Wild fans on
It's
Twitter
a
again.
Yeah, no, it's a good debate to be had. I don't think it should take away from what he's been able to accomplish and
Yeah,
how good he's been in the NHL. He's been great. But I also think, Artemi Panarin, I think it was Panarin was in a
it
similar
was
situation
Panarin. Yeah,
and he won the rookie of the year. So, you can't punish a guy for the criteria not being what we want.
no,
But at the end of the day, you're still allowed as, a person with a ballot, a person with a critical opinion to think that Jason Robertson's rookie season was the best rookie season in the league.
yeah. I'm not going to begrudge people for voting for Kaprizov. I mean, you're talking about rookies. He's considered a rookie. His season's been unbelievable. But I think you're right. My vote would probably go to Jason Robertson or Josh Norris. But you saw the bulk of this core be constructed during your time in Ottawa. I mean, you got to Ottawa around the time of the Carlson trade and when things were really starting to kick into high gear in terms of the rebuild. So now that you're seeing everything kind of come to fruition and Norris is an impact player and Batherson and Stützle and all these guys, are you optimistic for the future of this team?
Yeah, I am. I think if they can keep that group together, and if they can sign these players to second contracts, then I think that they have a bright future. I think you could probably go around the league and say, "Hey, let's put the Ottawa Senators current roster up against your roster and who would you pick?" And a lot of people are going to pick the Sens roster because they have a lot of really promising young skilled players on that team and they're learning how to play the right way. They have great work ethic. That's the one thing that you talk to anybody and they're going to tell you that the Ottawa Senators aren't going to give you a night off. They're not an easy out. And that's a really great hardworking culture that DJ Smith specifically has created in with this Ottawa Senators group. So not only do you have skilled players, you have skilled players who are learning the right discipline, the right work ethic, who are playing the right way. There is a lot of players who are highly skilled who, they're allowed to go and do whatever they want on the ice and off the ice. And maybe they go to a team with more structure and it doesn't work out for them. I think that there's real value in the culture that they're building with this group. So I think they do have a bright future. Again, the asterisk there is if they can keep them all together naturally. But I think that they've got the pieces. It's going to be finding the right time to have them all up together. It's going to be about finding the right secondary pieces, secondary scoring around them. Because you could have a great Calgary, you can have a great top 6, but if your bottom 6 isn't great and you don't have and if you don't have the right depth and if you can't put it all together at the same time, it's obviously, you know, not going to work out great. But I do think that looking at the future of this team, I'm just trying to think of like what the lines could look like. I mean, if we think that Stützle is going to be a number one center one day, you'll probably have like a Batherson, Stützle, Kachuk,
Yep.
Formenton, Norris, Sokolov.
Dadonov right now, but yeah, if you're looking down the line, probably
Yeah,
Sokolov.
Dadonov on the second line. Although he's probably been a little bit disappointing. He hasn't done exactly what people thought
his
for the amount
underlying
of money he's making.
Yeah, but his underlying metrics are terrific, and he's had some like historically bad shooting luck. So I mean, yeah, the numbers aren't what you'd like,
It's
but
just a bad year.
Yeah, he's playing fine. I mean, a career 70-point guy. I'm not too worried about it.
Yeah, and then you'll probably have this really great line with Pinto and Connor Brown probably.
Mm-hmm.
Like that could be a really good two-way third line for you, and then
maybe Parker Kelly's in there too.
Yeah, Parker Kelly's he's someone that will probably surprise some people. He has a great little story.
Mm-hmm.
Like someone who maybe people weren't really talking about, but Troy Mann told me that there's not a single player who's in there asking for tape and doing more work than Parker Kelly.
Yeah.
So he's someone to look forward to as well. I feel like I'm forgetting people because they have so many young players on the come up. I mean, I think Jake Sanderson is. I don't know where Colin White fits anymore when you look at the center depth. Like, is he your fourth line center now?
It depends.
Or do you move him to the wing?
It depends what Ridley Gregg turns into. If Ridley Gregg comes up and then can play center and Shane Pinto's playing an effective center role, you either move White to the wing or you trade him. I think that's
and
but they're not there yet.
No, I'm thinking like future. I personally think Shane Pinto will be a great third line center. Just looking at the way that he's being used already at the NHL level, he's like his first game, he was already taking defensive zone faceoffs on the PK. To give a player like that kind of responsibility, like that's a ton of trust from DJ and the coaching staff. Whoever is running the PK, that's some automatic trust in Shane Pinto. But that's what he did at UND, and that's one of the reasons why he was like a Hobey Baker hat trick finalist. He not only led his team in scoring, but he had the best face-off percentages in college hockey, I believe, or he was up there.
Yeah.
So I think Pinto is going to be a really great two-way center. And, he's also, I think he had like 5 points in his first 5 games or 5 points in his first 6. And he's playing power play time and he's taking D-zone faceoffs on the PK and 5-on-5. I'm a big fan of what he can do.
Yeah.
And like everyone was crapping on his pick when he got selected. So.
Oh yeah, that's typical Ottawa. But he reminds me, and I don't know that he'll ever hit that kind of like level, but he reminds me a lot of Patrice Bergeron, where he's really good in the offensive zone, really steady, but dynamite defensively and dynamite on draws. There was one game at UND this year, he went 18-0 on the faceoff circle. Like it's just ridiculous.
He's so solid. Yeah, he's really good. And I remember, I did a feature on Pinto when I was still with the Sens, covering the Sens, excuse me. And he told me that I think it was 4 years ago now, like he wanted to play baseball. 5 years ago, he wanted to play for the Phillies. He wanted to be a baseball player because his sister plays softball. His mom played baseball. Like that's a baseball softball family. So he's like, I'll play for the Phillies. He's from the New York area. He's like, yeah, I'll play for the Phillies. And then it was when Crosby won. So it was when Crosby won his second Stanley Cup in a row. He was like, maybe I can do that.
So started playing hockey in high school.
Oh, yeah. That was when I graduated. So Crosby won his second cup in a row when I graduated university, because I said, like, if they win, I will wear a Crosby jersey at graduation. And I was like, this will be the most on brand, like, sport media thing that you can do. And they won. So I had the vintage Penguins jersey under my grad gown, and people were like, of course you did. I was like, yes, I did. So yeah, that was 2017 where he was like, oh yeah,
no, people in Ottawa don't need to be reminded that it was 2017. Thank you.
Yeah, well, they need to be reminded because people keep calling me a Leafs fan. So get it
That's
straight. But no, like that's just crazy. And then he said that he watched a ton of clips of Crosby. He watched a lot of Mark Scheifele game tape, so you can kind of see where he's trying to create his game off of is these players in Scheifele and Crosby, and really just 200-foot complete players who play up the middle. And it's just a really remarkable rise through the game for Pinto.
Yeah. And we haven't even talked about guys like Lassie Thompson, Vitaly Abramov. I mean, Logan Brown's a question mark at best at this point, but in net, like the situation's unbelievable with Joey Decord and Philip Gustafson and Mads Sogard, Kevin Mandolese, Levi Marilainen. And even on the off chance that you lose one of Decord or Gustafson to Seattle, you're still in really good shape. So, I mean,
and Marcus Hogberg, Matt Murray.
yeah, I think Marcus Hogberg, I think his time in Ottawa might be done. I think that probably signified by the Anton Forsberg extension. But I mean, I asked you the same thing about Calgary, but what do you think they need to add in the offseason to take that next step? Like, to me, they clearly have a pressing need for a right-handed defenseman. Artem Zub has been a revelation. He's been phenomenal, maybe a top pairing guy. Nikita Zaitsev has been on and off, not great for his cap hit, but serviceable in kind of a bottom four role. And Jacob Bernard-Docker, like you said, looks great, but I mean, it's a little early to put your stock in him just yet. You'll have to wait to camp and see what you have. So, I mean, I think right-handed defense, undoubtedly, but where do you kind of land on it?
Yeah, I would probably agree. I think right shot D has been a big hole that they've had, and that's one of the reasons why last year we talked about, why they should have been keeping a guy in Dylan DeMello. Look at how great Thomas Chabot was when he played with DeMello, and that's something that you could have been replicating through this year as well. That stability on the blue line is great. I know he's had a bit of a I wouldn't even say it's a down year, but I think he maybe hasn't been as effective in Winnipeg. I think he's been playing mostly on the third pair, so he hasn't exactly been what he was when he was playing with Chabot. But again, it's a different team, it's a different structure, it's different pairs. And there was enough of a sample size of DeMello with Chabot to say that he was, a really great fit. I think at the end of the day, him and his agent were probably looking for too much term. And that was the big problem between the two sides. So they did move on, and, we're trying to find some, replacements. But I think some of the players they brought in are, they're just replacement level defenders. So that's going to be a big change. I do think, though, with this team, I think fans would probably agree. Like, I think this is going to be an off season where the Sens maybe need to reel in the amount of veteran depth they bring in.
Yes.
I don't have the returns in front of me, so I don't know what the net gain or net loss would have been from all the moves that they made. But like, there was several people that they gave up assets for that they traded, and I don't know if they ended up getting more in return. Like, to let Anthony Duclair walk because you were afraid of the $4 million ARB number. And I'm sure there is more to it than that. But, just looking at Duclair going, because you don't want to lock him into like a $4 million contract to then trade, what was it, a 4th round pick for Eric Goodbranson?
5th, yeah.
Making a 5th round pick for Goodbranson. What did they get? Did they get a 7th?
7th from Nashville.
Him?
Yeah.
So that's a net loss. So you gave up a 5th to get a 7th. Who else? Coburn.
Yeah, but they got a second round pick out of Tampa to take on those contracts. So that was like.
But then they flipped those guys and got more assets in return. So
Paquette,
those were probably.
Yeah, Paquette turned into Dzingel, and Coburn turned into, I think, a 7th from the Islanders.
Okay, so you're getting Dzingel, a 7th and a 2nd. So those are fine. Like, those are smart. Those are fine moves, right? But, you just have to go down the list and say, like, okay, did we actually, like, is it a net gain or a net loss from these moves that they made? And I think if you go through it, they probably did end up gaining more. But I think this offseason is going to be one where, you have a 56 game sample with a lot of these young players to know okay, they can play, right? It's going to be different. I don't think there's going to be question marks of can Stützle play in the NHL? Is Norris going to be a number one center?
Yeah.
Can Formanton play? I think you're going into the season with more guys written into your lineup that you're not going to have to go out with as big of a checklist saying, okay, we're going to need this guy in case. We're going to need this guy in case. So you'll probably see less of those moves. And I think that's probably a good thing, because these guys have gone out and they've played, and they're still towards the bottom of the league standings, but they've gone out and they've proven that they can be everyday NHL players. So I think the Sens are going to have to do an accounting of what they have and what they think they still need. I don't think there's going to be glaring needs in their top six.
No.
So it'll probably be a year where they can go out and get some depth players, some guys in free agency, on league minimum deals, whatever it may be. And then, really just try to shore up the defense, because on your blue line, you got Shabbat. Was it Shabbat Zaitsev top pair?
Pretty much, yeah. Might be looking at a Shabbat Zug type thing next year. Hopefully, that's what everybody wants, but we'll see.
And who else? And you Brandstrom signed?
Yeah, Brandstrom, and then
JBD's on his entry level.
Mm-hmm.
All saying, like, you've got a bunch of young players, and you have Josh Brown.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you're probably going to need to do something on defense.
I would think so. I would think they're going to need another left-hander and another right-hander probably.
Yeah.
Victor Mete. That's who was playing bottom pair. I can't believe I forgot Mete, because he's been great. So he's been a great fit, and I would be shocked if
I was at the rink. I was at the rink in Calgary when he got put on waivers, and I was like, Pierre Dorian's this is a good fit. I was like, if Dorian doesn't do something, then I don't know anything about the job I did for 18 months.
I literally said the same thing on Twitter. I'm like, if Dorian does not put a claim in, I don't know what they're doing. And he's been fantastic. I mean, there are concerns about the size on the blue line, because him and Brandstrom are both smaller guys, but I mean, the way they both move the puck has been ridiculous, and you can get that size on the right side too. I mean, if Josh Brown does nothing else, he's big. He hasn't been a great fit in every sense of the word, but he's been big and solid when he needs to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that's probably some of like what they were going for, right? They wanted to get, you wanted to have like a big body who can front the puck, while you have like paired with a guy who can move the puck up the ice and be your skilled guy.
Yeah.
Obviously that fit doesn't always work in practice, but that's obviously what they were going for with some of their pairings.
Yeah, that's what they wanted at a good Branson that they didn't get. All that talk about off-season additions, and we didn't even talk about a second-round pick for Derek Stepan, which, that is looking rough in the rearview mirror.
That was the one where I was like, what's the other trade I was thinking of that they ended up not, like they traded for him, and
Yeah, I was thinking like it's fine, because they got they had an abundance of second round picks. They got another one from Tampa. You're bringing in a guy who can play center, has playoff experience, and it just that I whiffed on that one. I gotta say that was not good on my part. But I mean, Hailey, this has been fantastic. But before I let you go, I do want to talk a little bit about your current ventures that you're up to now, and give the people of Ottawa a kind of little update on where you're at now that you are so far away. Not only did you jump ship to another market, but you jumped ship to another podcast. What's it been like doing the Athletic Hockey Show with Ian Mendes?
Yes, that was one of the things that we had talked about, before I left, was doing a national podcast, and, Ian said that he would love to do one with me, and it's been great. I mean, the one I'll say, we used to record at we would start recording at 9 a.m. Mountain Time. And I'm just really cranky on Monday morning. So that was an adjustment for me. So we record on video too. And I was saying, off camera, anytime we do a video clip of something, I'm reminded of how badly I should, I need to sleep. Cause I'm like, oh God, the bags under my eyes are outrageous. I don't sleep apparently, such as the hockey season. But no, it's been great. Ian and I, obviously got to know each other while I was in Ottawa. We also got to do, a lot of stuff with, he had me on the drive at TSN 1200 all the time. And it was funny when I left, the Sens market to come to Calgary. A lot of the things that people were saying was like, Ian, you need to keep having her on the drive because you guys have such great chemistry. You can have her on every time the Flames play. And Ian and I were like, like they don't know yet. Because again, like, you know, there was a plan laid out. You know, I wasn't just leaving the Sens market high and dry. And I know some people were kind of mad, like, who are we getting? Like, camp starting, like the Athletic is being shady. And we're like, no, we're just trying to like do one announcement, let it breathe a little, and then do another announcement instead of like announcing them both right at the same time. And people are like, wait, what's happening? So we were trying to just like pad the announcements a little bit. So that was funny, like seeing a lot of the comments of people saying like, you guys had great chemistry. I hope you guys can still do some radio stuff together. And then we ended up doing the podcast, and it's been great. I mean, we have a lot of our athletic colleagues on because, you know, it is a national show and we don't want to just be talking about the Sens and the Flames all the time. And we try not to do that. And we try to make sure it doesn't have a North Division bias. So we have a lot of our different colleagues on. We did have Bobby Ryan on early on in the year, and that was great to catch up with Bobby. And,
He's the best.
You know, I can't speak highly enough about Bobby Ryan as a person. So that was great to have him on. It's been good. Ian makes too many dad jokes. It drives me crazy. You can tell like how cranky I am when he says some of these things. But it's been good. It's been fun to work with Ian, and he's a great guy. He's really great at what he does. And I'm sure Sens fans are happy to have him in Ottawa.
A little birdie told me about the whole bait and switch that was happening beforehand. So I was kind of watching everything play out. I watched the meltdown when you announced you were leaving, and I'm like, oh, this is going to be good. Yeah. I was kind of watching it like the same as you, just kind of like that.
Yeah, we did have like, and my boss told me like, don't say anything. Like, don't even say that you guys are going to be like happy. And I was like, but they're so upset. And like, yeah. I felt that. And in a moment of panic, I kind of said to someone, they're like, this, like someone was upset. And I was like, don't worry, like you'll have a replacement, like you'll be happy. And someone replied with like, Ian Mendez, why I'm joining the Athletic. And I was like, oh shit. And Myrtle was like, I freaking told you not to say anything. He's like, I specifically told you not to do that. And I was like, I didn't say anything. I just said like, you'll be fine. You'll be happy. And they were like, Ian Mendez. I was like, oh shit. I've made a mistake. But obviously it's worked out pretty well.
I remember seeing that exact same tweet.
I will say, and, you know, I said this off air too, like, you know, one of the things that has been, you know, difficult this year, it's not difficult, it's fine. It's just, it's seeing a lot of the players that, you know, I wrote about last year, especially when I was doing my prospect reporting, like seeing them, you know, doing well at the NHL level. I mean, you're watching it and you're like, there's a little bit of like, I was right. Like there's a lot of that. But it's also, you know, for me, like I think I showed, like it came across that, you know, obviously game analysis and analyzing the team is a very important part of the job, and I love doing that. But I think telling people stories was my favorite part about doing the job. And so seeing, you know, a guy like Nick Paul, after I wrote about his long journey to get to the Sens, finally get an A this year, like seeing that was cool. And seeing you know, Josh Norris, who I said, like, don't count this guy out next year. Like, he's going to be your top 6 center. Seeing him be a number 1 center. Drake Batherson playing really well. Obviously, Brady Tkachuk is Brady Tkachuk. Seeing Pinto step into the NHL and play that role right away. Even Joey Decord, like, the first game I watched him play in Belleville, I was like, this guy is going to make a name for himself. Like, he's going to jump up this goalie rank, the depth chart here. And so that's been the one thing that I joked with Ian too. And I said, I was like, I should put out like a really self-centered column about all the things I was right about. And he was like, you should do it. Like, do it. Tell everyone I told you so. And I won't do that, but I will say that, you know, that's been one of the parts about, you know, watching it from afar in Calgary, seeing players that, you know, I wrote about and told their story and wrote about, you know, look at what this player can become, and seeing them become that. It's been cool. You know, that's been obviously, it'd be great to be covering them doing it, but I am really happy to be here in Calgary, and hopefully I have the opportunity to kind of do the same thing here. But it is pretty cool to see a lot of the guys, and it's just cool to see the Sens heading down this path. Because I said before, I do think they have a bright future.
Yeah, I think you're underestimating how badly people in Ottawa want you writing about their team again. Even if it's just one more story to say I was right about everything, I think that would go over really well, to be honest with you.
I think it would be rude. Just like, hey, everyone, here's all the things that I was absolutely correct about. Joey Decord, Shane Pinto, like, it would just be so, like, Tim Stützle. Like, I mean, come on, like, anyone could say Tim Stützle's gonna be a good player. He's a third overall pick. Like, yeah, he was obviously gonna be fine. But no, that would be, I couldn't do that. That's not my personality. I don't know. I would feel weird, because then I would get a comment of someone being like, you're an asshole, and then I would probably cry. So I'm not going to open myself up to criticism. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that on this podcast.
No, you're fine.
So I'm not going to open myself up to mean comments, because I'll just get sad.
Oh,
I'm not good at that.
The mean comments just make me laugh. But Hailey, this has been terrific. I hope you change your mind about that column, because I think it would be hilarious. But regardless, thank you so much for coming back on. I really do appreciate it. It's always great hearing from you, and I'm glad you're killing it out in Calgary.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, tell everyone where they can find you. I mean, they already all probably know, but
Yeah, I mean, all my stuff's on the Athletic NHL. It'll be on the Calgary site. I don't know my Twitter handle. Everything on my Twitter is Hailey _ everyone always asks me this, and I'm like, I think my Twitter is just my name. It's Hailey Salvian. It's Hailey _Salvian. You can follow me on Twitter if you want to find any of my stuff there, but it's all on the Athletic. As you should. Make sure to get the Athletic subscription if you haven't already, and follow Hailey on Twitter. That's it for this episode of the podcast. Make sure you like it, share it on Twitter, and all social medias. Follow, download, subscribe, all the fun things that go a long way and are greatly appreciated. Thank you for listening as always, and we will see you with another episode next week. Take care, everybody.